Track mats are another really good way of creating transparency in layers and blending layers with each other to create different types of composites and collage work. Let me just set up a few assets so that I can show you how we can use track mats. I'm going to import a few images this time. Just a couple of textures. Okay, so new composition, same as the last few. I'll call this track mat. And I'll pop those two guys into the timeline and position them. We'll do a little bit of setup. So this one I'm going to have animated over about 5 seconds and it's going to increase in size, so it's going to come towards us. So it looks good to me. And we're going to have a cut in this composition here. So I'm going to shorten the length of this layer here in terms of time down to 5 seconds. Now I can come right to the end of my layer there and drag that down to where my last keyframe is. Or I can hit or can position the timeline indicator where I want to kind of truncate that layer and hit Option and the right square bracket and it will automatically do that for me. I'm going to do the opposite for my asset underneath. I'm going to hold Option and the left square bracket and it'll truncate kind of the start of it. And for this one I'm going to, there it is, the scale is quite large. So I'm going to make it go from, I just need to move that 1 pixel there, 1 frame. I'm going to make it go from a larger size down to a smaller size. So it's going away from us. So I suppose I've set up some animation, some footage here, and we can apply some track mats to that. The track mats that I'm going to use, and when I say track mats, I'm really talking about a layer that I can use as a mask. So think about clipping masks in Photoshop. That's a good kind of analogy to what a track mat is. Let me bring in some Illustrator assets. I'm going to go File, import a couple of files. And I've prepared a couple of a triangle, maybe a square in our triangle. So our triangle, we can use our triangle on the first sequence. So again, a grey triangle there. Let me just drag this over here so it doesn't. Yep, and the other one is going to be this little square. Okay, so I've got an Illustrator object over the top of each of the layers that I want to mask out using track mats. So I'm going to, with this first one, I'm going to come to the bit of footage that I want to have masked, so underneath the layer that is masked. And I'm going to make sure that we've got the track mat showing, so I've got to make sure that I expand those columns so I can see those columns. And in this little track mat pull down, I'm going to change it from none to alpha matte. So you can see now that this layer here, my animation, is using the layer above it to track matte using the alpha matte operator. So it effectively uses the shape, the graphic shape of the layer above to mask out the layer below, which is really good. And you can see that that white area there is transparent. If I just change the composition background color. Oops, what did I do there? I need to go to composition settings and change the background color so I can show that it's transparent around the back there. Just undo that. And I mean, I suppose the really good thing about using track mattes is that they're two independent layers with the full set or suite of transformation properties available to be animated. So I've obviously animated this element underneath, change the scale, but I can create some animation on the top layer there. So I might change the scale of this also, but I might go in the opposite direction and drop that down a little bit. So now you can see that my asset, the texture, is moving in one direction and the mask is animating in another direction, and I've got that kind of nice compounded animation. So I'm animating the mask as well as the footage underneath. So let's do the same thing with our square. I'm going to come to the element that the footage that I want masked. I've brought in a graphic that I want to use as the mask, and I'm going to use the track matte column here to add alpha matte operator to that. And you can see now that I've used that kind of grey square to mask out that texture, which is kind of cool. And again, I can animate both of those things independently of each other. The graphic that I'm using as the mask, I'm just going to pull down the rotation property, R on the keyboard, and add a full rotation to that animation. So you can see now that my mask rotates independently and it masks out that asset underneath there. So that's excellent. You might have noticed that there are a couple of other operators under here. There is the alpha inverted matte, and that, as you might have guessed, inverts that mask. So you can see now that my mask's inverted. And we do also have the luma options as well, which take on the brightness property of the mask layer. And you remember that my mask is a 50% grey, so if I use the luma, you'll see that it's masked it using the shape, but it's also taking on that transparency information there. So that is using track mattes to mask out assets in Adobe After Effects.